All right. Good that you're here. We have a lot I'm going to try to cover. I know this is a lot of information. I'm sorry it can get kind of monotonous. I try to make it as exciting as I can. We're almost through, though, so there's a lot of the tunnel for wanting to move on to something new. We'll be there eventually. But as we get to near the end of this study, and we're getting close to the Syrians coming into the northern kingdom of Israel. We're just a little ways from that. We'll get there soon. As we approach that, in our last study, we talked about Amaziah. We ended that study and how his reign was not a good one, to be quite honest. He did have troubles. You remember he ended up, not well there in Judah, as well as Jeroboam. By the way, extra bonus point. Well, we'll get there in just a second. So, and then we went to Jeroboam in Israel. Look at his time again. He did a few things, but it was really not a great time for Israel. And then Uzziah or Azariah in Judah. So that's kind of where we've been. We spent some time on those. Tonight, we're going to try to make a quick succession through a few kings that there's just not a lot written about. We're going to spend some time in Israel. Now, before we do, just real quickly, Uzziah, how long was his reign?
40.
Either you can do a quick math there, or if you might remember.
16 and he was 16 when he started, right? And it was 58 years?
Close, 52, right there. I haven't done the deep research, but I believe he's the longest reigning king. Well, no, Manasseh. He beat him out barely, Manasseh. But they're both over 50 years. Uzziah, 52. That's a lengthy period as the kings go. I'll introduce my cool chart that I like. You may not like it, but I like it. My cool chart in just a minute. But he reigns 52 years. And so in that succession of time, in Israel, there are a quick succession of kings. So we're going to look at Zechariah, Shallum, and Menahem, and Pekahiah, and Pekah, all in the time of Uzziah, sorry. I get my names right. Uzziah or Azariah. They all are spend some time on the throne in Israel. All right, and then we'll come back to the north with Jotham. Look at his reign as well, and then Ahaz in Judah as well. Now, quick bonus points without looking. Who's the last king to reign in Israel? In Israel. That's right, it's Hosea. Hoshea, however you want to pronounce his name. We'll get to him. We're almost there. So we have a quick succession to go through. Now, quickly, before I get into it, I have one chart that I really like for everybody to have. Anybody not have this particular chart that would like one? This one I think is simple and easy to understand. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, if I don't hit the podium. All right, so that'll be something to keep with you as we move through. All right, so everybody buckle in. We're going to try to go quickly through a couple of these. All right, so let's talk about Zechariah. So we're in Israel, capital Samaria. Now, who was the king right before Zechariah? What? 2 Kings 15. Who is the king right before Zechariah? Who is it when we come into this text? Jeroboam the second, right? All right, now, just keep that in mind. So, Zechariah is the fourth son of whom? Fourth son of Jehu. Jehu. Just remember that. He's the fourth son of Jehu. All right. So let's go to 2 Kings 15. The text tells us in the 38th year of Azariah. So Azariah or Uzziah, this is further into his reign. So Jeroboam made up a big segment of his reigning time. So Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, reigned over Israel and Samaria 6 months. Very short time period. Very short. And again, you look on the chart that I just handed out, you can see where we are. Okay, so Zechariah, he's the fourth son, or fourth generation from Jehu. He takes over. He reigns 6 months, very short time. Now, just real quickly summarizing his reign in Israel, verse 9. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. This is a phrase we've heard a lot. He did not, as his fathers had done, he did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, which refers back to his idolatrous ways, which he made Israel to sin. There's really not a whole lot else about him. That's it, right? There's no big event covered about him. Now, why is he significant? Well, he's significant, number one, because he did what was evil in the eyes of God. That's pretty significant. But also, being the fourth son of Jehu, what's the significance of that? Go to verse 12. This was the promise of the Lord that he gave to Jehu. Your son shall sit on the throne of Israel to the fourth generation. Remember, God made that promise all the way back when Jehu took the throne, and because he had gotten rid of the Baal worshipers, had gotten them out of Israel, and done some good things for Israel, God said, okay, I'm going to set you on the throne, your family, to the fourth generation. Significant. All right, so he comes on. He's just like Jeroboam, maybe even worse. Again, it does not get into the details of what he did, but just significant. Okay, so at the end of 6 months, what happens? A coup happens, and it's led by this man named Shalom. Shalom decides he's going to reign. And so it says in the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Judah, he reigned 1 month. 1 month in Samaria. So one guy reigns 6 months, the other guy kills him, reigns 1 month. Okay, hold on. Let me encapsulate all this and I'll take questions. So for 7 month period, you have one king, and he's murdered, who now another guy becomes king. Now God made a promise that Jehu's family would have the throne for 4 generations. However, at 4, it switches. But what do you notice? Another arrow. Right? So it's at this point that Menahem decides he wants to be king. And so you really have a lot going on here in a short period of time. It says in verse 14, then Menahem, the son of Gadai, came up to Tirzah, came to Samaria, and he struck down Shalom, the son of Jabesh, in Samaria, and put him to death and reigned in his place. I know I said a lot. I'm sorry. I just wanted to kind of get through all that. So then, what does all of that really kind of picture? There is what? And just like I read it and it felt like chaos, that's what's going on. That's why I wanted to do it that way. Because it's a lot going on, and the kingdom itself is incredibly at unrest. Now, and you compare that with what's going on in Judah, it's a different story. Now, I'm not saying that Azariah or Uzziah was a good king. He wasn't. He got in trouble. Remember, at the end of his life, he got leprosy, or God gave him leprosy because of his sin. But as far as politically speaking, it's a lot more stable than it is in Israel. Things are very unstable at the time. So that'll lead into some other things. But what you see here is just a quick succession of kings, a lot of changing of power. So now, if you're a Menahem, what's your number one goal? You have to find stability. Because what if he doesn't, what's going to happen to him? There'll be just another guy who will come up and kill him. Right? So he's got to find some kind of stability. And so that's what he's going to strive to do. Before I get into that, Jody, you had a question.
Well, I was just going to point out, it seems really kind of funny. King James says that Shehu lived a full month. I mean, I hope it wasn't that word.
Yeah. I don't know if they had in their calendar a short month or not, but you wouldn't want that one.
February would be a short month.
So, so it's a really quick turnover. And so as we move into Menahem, that's going to be something he's going to have to deal with. So let's go to him. All right, so we'll spend just another longer minute on him. He's going to get into some more things. Now, the rest of the deeds of Shalom, and the conspiracy that he made, behold, are they written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. I wish I had that book. I don't know what the conspiracy was. Is he talking about this conspiracy to kill Zechariah? Probably. But that's all the details. It's just like a little teaser, and there's no, like, juice. All right. So it's like the orange juice you used to get on airplanes, right? And they give you, who is that made the joke? Like it's getting to the point where on airplanes they just bring you out a wet rag that they dipped in the orange juice and kind of squeeze it in your mouth, right? Some of us don't even remember a time when they used to actually feed you on the airlines. Now you get that little package of peanuts or whatever. Pretzels or whatever it is. But anyway, that's it, right? So we move on to Menahem. So he reigned, you can just notice there off the header that he reigns 10 years. A little lengthier reign. So he's able to stabilize the situation that had become very, very chaotic during the time before him. And so when we read in between the lines, I think that's kind of important to kind of see that there's what's written in the Scripture that we can know, and then there's some things we can devolve from the Scripture that are going on in just the political, social realm of the day, right? Think about how that chaos at the top filters down to the people.
It gets worse. I mean, the farther it goes, the worse it becomes.
Now remember, they had gotten rid of Baal worship, hadn't they? Chaos becomes an opportunity for Satan too, doesn't it? So just keep that in mind. All right, so the text says he reigned 10 years, much lengthier reign. And again, you just see it there. I won't continue on with it. But so let's go to verse 16. So the text tells us in verse 16, a verse earlier than 17 there. It says, at that time, Menahem sacked Tiphsah and all who were in it and its territory from Tirzah on because they did not open it to him. You kind of get a picture of who this guy is. Notice as it goes on. Therefore, he sacked it. Why did he sack it? And he ripped open all the women in it who were pregnant. Now, you get an image of who this guy is, right? Just from that. I just say that to you. That says something about him, doesn't it? His ruthless character. We're going to talk about some things. When we get into some of these other guys, you're going to be like, whoa, what happened there? When we get to Ahaz, you hear what he did, right? But the brutality of who he is, right? It just really comes out there. That's why I wanted to share 16 there with you. I mean, I can't think of much more of evil thing than to do what he did, and to do it purposely. There's a purpose behind it, isn't it? He's trying to send a message. All right. So, verse 18 says, he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. We could see that coming, all right? He did not depart all his days from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. Again, sins of Jeroboam were idolatry, right? It's a reference back to idolatry. This is a man who indulged idolatry in the nation, allowed it, participated in it. And he's an evil king, but he's a guy that needs stability. So how does he find it? Well, Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents that he might help him to confirm his hold on the royal power. Menahem exacted the money from Israel, that is, from all the wealthy men, 50 shekels of silver from every man, to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Couple important things here. Number one, you notice where's the money come from?
The wealthy.
The wealthy. Did it come out of his pocket?
Nope.
He's stabilizing the kingdom from himself with somebody else's money. Something government likes to do. Right? But without you, it's really easy to miss it, but there's something else in the text that we cannot overlook. Anybody catch the little nugget of information? It's pretty important, though. Anybody? Who did he bribe? The king of Assyria. So, I don't really have a great map to show you this, but I'm going to try to point it out. So, to the north of Israel, who's the bad neighbors? Syria. Right? Syria. Syria's been causing trouble. We've seen them do that through Ben-Hadad and through... oh, thank you, though. I can't say that name anymore. Maybe that's been it the whole time. I've never realized it. That's probably dumb on my part. But they have been raiding and causing a lot of trouble, not just for Israel, but even Judah and the neighbors around. It's been Syria, right? That group have been causing a lot of trouble. But did you notice the name change? What is that a reference to?
The green part is Assyria.
Yes, but that's correct, which will be the future kingdom here in the yellow, right? This will be the Assyrian kingdom. Now, the blue underneath, don't let that confuse you. That's the Babylonians, and when they take power from the Assyrians. But what's going on in Syria at the moment? What it alludes to is the fact that Syria is having its own civil war, where there's a division that has occurred there. We'll be introduced to two guys that are pretty important. Rezin, king of Syria. And, his name is hard, but Tig-Paleth. I'm not saying that exactly right, but I'll get it in a minute. But Tiglath-Pileser. And he is the king of Assyria, right? And so there is a war, there's a division that's happened in Syria. So while all this is going on, there's other things going on in the other nations around them, and this is important for later. So just keep this in mind. This will come back up when we get to Ahaz. Remember this. This civil war will end under the reign of Ahaz. Now, why is that significant? Well, we're getting to the time when Assyria is going to invade Israel and then Judah later. We'll talk about that when we get there. But just keep that stuff in mind. So I wanted to share that with you. All right, so again, not a whole lot about Menahem. We have some more nuggets than we do the other guys, but again, another bad king. Now, when he dies, Pekahiah, his son, will then begin to reign. That's who we'll move to next. So Pekahiah, he becomes king about 738. But what do you notice? A very short reign again. He will not reign very long. In the 50th year of Azariah. So what does that say? We're getting near the end of Uzziah or Azariah's reign. So that's also important. I just want to keep all this in mind. So this has been kind of stabilized now for a short period of time. Now they're going to go through another disruption in just a minute. But what happens here? Well, we're going to have a changeover in king here. And anytime you change kings, what's going to happen? There's going to be some instability. And so you've gotten near the end of Uzziah's reign, and now Pekahiah becomes king. He only reigns 2 years. So this chart I found, I really like it. Some of you may not be able to see it real well from where you are, but you can come up and look at it afterwards. It just shows you and lays out the kingdom or the reigns of different people. It also puts the prophets in place. Now, who's prophesying at this time? So this is nice to know. So then you can go to the Bible, look up those books, and then you can place these groups together, and it will help you to understand their prophetic messages. Who's prophesying during this time? Isaiah. A lot of what Isaiah will write about is directed to Israel and to Judah. And so he has a Micah. Micah's another one who is prophesying during this time. And then Hosea is also prophesying during this time. So we're about 700 years before Jesus. All right. I won't show you that again. We just looked. So, again, another short statement about him. There's just not that much written. It says he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Again, that's common for. You wonder, did the writer get tired of writing that? He's written that so many times. I wonder if he just had it copied. And it'd be nice to have a stamp right there at that one moment. You just stamp that one in there. But that's a phrase that continues to come up over and over and over again.
That shows all the influence that Jeroboam had in producing that sinful time that permeated all through the entire Israel thereafter. It's really his doing that started the ball rolling down that hill.
Yeah, exactly. And Menahem, Pekahiah's father, was able to give some stability. However, it's short-lived. It's just 10 years. And I'm not even sure that the kingdom is not in great shape, is it? He's a very sinful, evil man. He's not repentant toward God at all, right? Why is this important to know? What do you see going on in the kingdom? What in the kingdom of Israel? It's beginning to do what? Fall apart. Things are beginning to unravel. We are headed toward something. right? They are headed towards something. That's what I want you to see, is that all this is occurring, and what you never see in Israel, you'll see it in Judah with a couple people where they will turn back to God for periods of time.
But then they go right back over.
But in Israel, it just never really happens. And especially as you get near the end, things just start to fall apart. And that's what's going on here. Well, go to verse 25, 2 Kings 15:25. And Pekah, the son of Remaliah, his captain, conspired against him with 50 men of the people of Gilead and struck him down, talking about Pekahiah, and struck him down in Samaria in the citadel of the king's house with Argob and Ariah. He put him to death and reigned in his place. So 2 years he's been on the throne. Things, again, unravel. You have this other guy that says, hey, I've got a weak king. I'm just going to take him out. They conspire for whatever reason. And now Pekah becomes the king. It says, again, the same statement, of course, we've read a lot, which the rest of his deeds are written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel, a book we just do not have. So Pekah now becomes king. He reigns in Israel about 6 years. He reigns from about 736 to 730. You can put him in there. You can see how close we're getting. At about 700, what happens? That's when they are taken captive. So we see that coming, right? That coming day. Huh?
You say
It's around 20 years.
in 27.
You bring them up.
Maybe 27.
Am my dates wrong? Yeah, I'm sorry. It's 20 years. I don't know why I have 736 to 730. Sorry, about 20 years here. He reigned about 20 years. And again, what's said about him. So again, we see here the kingdom's been taken away from the family of Menahem, given now to Pekah. You also notice what you have a line down. Eventually, it's going to be taken away from Pekah as well. Again, 28, I mean, same thing, right? He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. He was completely unrepentant about that, which he made Israel to sin. Again, not a whole lot written, a little bit. Okay, Tiglath-Pileser, how the name I was trying to say earlier. All right, now, brought him up. Now we see him. It says, in the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and captured Ijon, and then it gives a whole list. I won't try to go through all those, but it says all these kind of northern areas, he's coming down in this area, it says right here, Naphtali. He's coming in and taking these areas. And it says he even gets into Galilee. So he's really making a push against Israel. So we kind of see an initial invasion here. Now, he's not going to take over Samaria, but we see this push. Tiglath is showing his power.
What was the name of the other king you say they were warring against each other?
Rezin. He's the king in the other place. So he comes in, and then notice the name. Then Hoshea, the son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and struck him down and put him to death and reigned in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. We're going to talk about Jotham in just a minute. But again, what do you see? Unrest. I mean, it's just continuing. Now, as I mentioned before, who's the last king in Israel? He's the last king. He will see the final elimination of Syria, which will become Assyria, and at that point they will eventually invade Israel. and take captive. But even here, Tiglath-Pileser shows what he normally would do. He invades, and what did he do? He carried people away, right? He carried them away. And so this kind of is the first invasion of Israel. And again, we don't have all that he did. Any questions up to here? I know we have covered a ton of material. Yes, sir.
I was just thinking that you would think that after so many, that at least one of these kings, even if they had to spend money, would have hired some people to stand around watching for people just to walk up and whack them.
Yeah, you wonder about the Secret Service of the day.
Honestly, yes, all this really did happen, but still, it's almost like, what's wrong with you people?
Well, and what's tough, at least with Pekahiah, one of his chief men conspired against him with Pekah, right, to kill him. It was a time period when it was a lot of infighting.
It also shows the fact that they had no respect for authority. Whoever's king was just a target.
And compare that to David, right? Compare that to David when Saul is after him out there in the wilderness, and David has an opportunity to kill Saul. He's standing right there beside of him. He cuts the little corner of his garment off, and David can barely contain himself crying because he's cut the garment of the king. He so respects the man of God that even the thought of cutting his garment is overwhelming to him. And he had several occasions to kill Saul. He never took it. Because why? This is God. I may not like him, but this is God's man. He may be trying to kill me. That's God's man. I don't have the right to do that. Remember the young man who comes to David and says he killed Saul? What does David do? He kills him, right? And you're right. It does have a lot to do with just a complete lack of respect for authority. Mm-hmm.
The northern kingdom had no respect for God by this time on. That goes back to the old story that they didn't appear to study history. And there's a phrase I guess I've heard before: if you don't study history, you're just bound to repeat. And then that's all they seem to be doing. And they walked away from God. Nobody ever turns back to ask, how can we change the situation? How can we be better? Seeking after God. The priests, apparently, what priests they had been bought out by the king, if you will, or whatever. They had abandoned, because they were supposed to be the watchdog, right?
The last really good priest we had was with Joash, right? Remember Joash's first part of his life, the high priest. He was a good man who tried to do what was right. Jehoiah, and he's gone now, right? And even in Judah, we'll notice that the high priest, is not the man of God he should be either. We'll see that in a little bit, but it's a good point.
It's just what God promised too, right? God, if you follow me, if you obey my stuff, then I'll take care of it. If you don't, then I'll let you go.
Well, and it's that trickle-down effect. They don't respect God, so they don't respect the king. They don't respect any kind of authority, and it causes us real unrest. So just real quickly. So in Israel, we had Jeroboam reign 41 years. After Jeroboam II, then we get into this quick succession of kings demonstrating a lack of stability. We had Zechariah reign 6 months. Shallum reigned 1 month. Menahem, 10 years. Pekahiah, 2. And then Pekah, 20. So the longest reign in that whole succession is just 20 years. And so it really demonstrates this is real turnover and lack of stability. And then we'll get to Hoshea in just a little bit. Any questions about any of this? Again, it's a lot of information. I really recommend those charts are good to go back and review. Also, I think it's great to put the prophets with them, like even Jonah. Well, when did Jonah reign? We know most most of us have heard the story of Jonah over and over all of our lives. It's about, Jonah going to Syria and trying to prophesy to them, and he does successfully. Well, he didn't just do that. I mean, he was a prophet, and so he lived during the time of Azariah, or Uzziah, and Jeroboam II. All right. So last little bit here. Let's look at Jotham. Let's go back to the south. All right. We're back down here in Jerusalem. Jotham is now king. The text tells us in verse 1, he reigned 16 years. His father reigned how long? 52. He must have felt shorted, right? He got 52, and he was a terrible king, and I get 16. He got a little bit longer than that, and we'll see why in just a minute. But he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. Verse 2, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, right? That's a great statement. But just like with his father, it's conditional, right? There's a standard according to all that his father Uzziah had done. All right? So he's not saying he did it up to the standard of David. He's not a king according to the standard of David. He's a king according to the standard of Uzziah. He did some good things. But he wasn't perfect by any means. He does get the thumbs up on this chart, though.
That next phrase is key, isn't it?
Yes, and that's right where I was going. Thank you. So, it does say at the end of verse 2 what? Except he did not enter the temple of the Lord. Just talked about authority. What was demonstrated as a lack of respect for authority in Uzziah's life?
Like a respect for God's house, temple.
In what way?
Do what the priest was supposed to do.
Mm.
He got the big head.
He went in the temple and tried to take the priest's job, right? And what did God do?
God given leprosy.
So, I think it's interesting. The writer of Kings wants to note to us, you don't see that in Jotham's life. He doesn't do that. He saw what happened and he learned from it. That's a good sign. Right? I like to see people who learn from mistakes. And man, you want to be a genius? Here's the way you show you're a genius. Learn from other people's mistakes without you having to make them, right? He looked at his dad and said, Dad, I love you, brother, but I don't want to do that, right? And so I agree that that's an important little phrase there. So, again, just looking at the chart here, we're done, but we'll finish him up. But we kind of see, even on this side, we're getting further down. Now, we're getting ready to get to a succession of a bad king and a son who outdid his father, which was Ahaz and Hezekiah. And then we'll see it go bad again with Manasseh. And then Josiah ends up becoming a good king. So we'll look at those. And once we get to Josiah, things then again happen really quickly at the end of the southern kingdom as well. All right. Thank you all so much. You'll be dismissed. Rejoin for our devotional in just a moment.